Good evening, everybody, and I hope you're doing well. I have somebody on Facebook that allows me to share some of her insights, and she works very diligently on the Nancy Guthrie case. So I'm going to read a brief narrative, and then I'm going to post a picture that she has of explaining her narrative. So these are her words, not mine, but I wanted to share it anyway. She calls it the secondary soap opera. And she says she is not a reliable watcher of live streams and never has been. But in the early weeks, she scoured the hours of YouTube coverage for clues as to how Nancy Guthrie case was progressing. She continues to prefer the content over the mainstream news broadcasts for a multitude of reasons, of which I completely understand. She's unscripted. This allows her to draw her own conclusions about what she sees. She's extremely talented. A lot of times she'll project something and 10 to 2 weeks later it will be announced on the news or somebody else will have come up with it. I keep telling her she needs to start a YouTube stream, but she just won't do it. Anyway, this is unedited. The streamers don't decide what is and not important for viewers to see. It is expansive. They stay for hours, providing interesting and provocative access to the scene without having to rubberneck or loiter. There is value in live streaming. There is extreme value on YouTube. And what we're witnessing now looks very much like the old guard resisting the new format. These disturbed neighbors, she states, have no problem with the major broadcasters camped outside of the crime scene for over 6 weeks. They didn't write anonymous letters about the big tents, loud generators, bright floodlights beaming well into the night. They didn't harp on the millions of dollars that every cable news program made by preparing this horrific crime with all their achievements. But now that NBC, ABC, CNN, CBS, and Fox have all lost interest, now that the scene has diminished into a few commentations, I think she meant to say, to the story, the upper middle class has a problem. The Catalina Foothills has a problem. Is that because they think they're better than everybody else? Regardless, the local media stations, predominantly KOAV, which is an NBC affiliate, is willing to give them a voice to complain about. They can go on KOAV, they can report issues to KOAV, and they get put on the local news station that night. What do you think about this ongoing attempt to dissuade citizen journalism? To me, which is her, it slaps a huge sign of hypocrisy, greed, racism, classism, and it draws attention away from our collective goal to bring revolution to this case. It seems like mainstream media wants to cover anything and anything that will draw attention to their network, but it is never about the Nancy Guthrie case anymore. They're strictly looking at all of the negative things in their opinion. Was this the intent? Is someone pulling the strings to bury this case? Or are we just watching a bigoted sideshow? And she uses the word bigoted in huge capital letters. She's extremely disgusted in the Catalina Foothills. She has very strong opinions on the sheriff's department. And as far as some of the residents, she says, without using foul language, I cannot describe my feelings towards several of the residents in Catalina Foothills, one in particular. Regardless, shame on KVOA for printing the statement, and shame on whichever neighbor authored this tone-deaf rebuttal to the two perceived lowlifes sitting on their curb. That's how they described it. That is not her description, and we know who she is talking about. And she did this a few days ago, prior to Alex's arrest last night. It is out of hand. It is absurd. It is against all civil and constitutional rights. But what she really has a hard time with, and I agree with her 100%, they can go there, just maybe 2 live streamers, be sitting on the side of the easement, talking to the channel, and they get arrested. But right next to them is KBOA and other networks, and they don't even get a little slap on the wrist. What is this really about? What is really going on? So that is her take, and she calls all of this, as I said, the secondary soap opera, because she's beginning to see the whole entire situation as becoming one life to live soap opera, and it is taking the focus away from the main thing, and that is the investigation of Nancy Guthrie. And apparently the sheriff has no news on that. But it's interesting that the last 2 nights they've had some updates on possibly in Mexico and maybe a kidnapping, but they hadn't said anything for over a month. They're trying to divert attention. That is what this is all about. So anyway, I will post the image that she has for this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you and have a good evening. And as always, stay safe.